Alright, here we go, got all the bits done finally. Didn't take too long, which is pretty nice. Everything's come out perfect, everything bolts together from the first test run I did last night. So let's get this all together. I'll tell you what some of the parts are. So that's the Y-axis scale. That's the Y-axis scale mount that bolts onto the cross slide. We've got the carriage mounting block, that's what the reader for the X and Y bolt to. That bolts onto the back of the carriage itself. Yeah, those are all the actual cross-slidey bits. I'm going to clean those while I've got it apart anyway. And that's the X-axis scale, X-axis mount behind it, and the joiner block, which has got the slots in it just to make bolting it all up a bit easier. So you can also see I've just finished drilling and tapping 3 M6s in the CNC to made up with the carriage block. So, very nice. Let's start putting all of this together then. So all the gibs are now back on and tightened up. Feels nice and good. So next up is the Y-axis DRO mounting strip. The Y-axis goes on next. Next task, we have to align the Y-axis scale to make sure it's parallel with the plane of the Y-axis carriage. So to do that, I'm just going to traverse it back and forth a little bit with the carriage, and then gently knock it until it doesn't move anymore, and hopefully then we should be level. Cool. Alright, so we're about 0.02 mils off across, what is it, 200 millimeters. It's good enough for me. So we'll just nip it up and call that one done. Next cab off the rank is the joiner block for the carriage. So these two tapped M5 holes go into the Y-axis reader, and these 3 M6s bolt onto the back of the carriage. So let's get that all together. So this is the X-axis mount. Now I've just noticed that even though the screws are supposed to be the right length, they stick up just a tiny little bit where they get cut off on the screw machine. So I'm just going to take those all out, knock them down with a grinder, then we'll put it back together. Okay, we're on the home stretch now, so bolts are all Loctited in. Got the whole assembly bolted up, as you can see, pretty big. So this block here bolts onto, let's have a look, see if we can see it. This is where, a bit too dark, but there's a plate right here where the old milling machine used to bolt on, so just transferred the whole pattern into this block, bolts on there, there's a bit of flat bar, bolts to the block, and then the scale bolts to that flat bar. Now this piece here just bolts to the bottom of the reader, and then these three slots bolt onto the carriage block that's already installed, just to allow a bit of adjustment. Now I actually had to fix this scale last night because it was DOA, but turns out it's very simple actually. If you just pull the 4 screws in the end cap off and pull the reader off, there's 2 sections. The actual reader head runs on these little bearing trucks on the inside of the extrusion. It's just like a roller coaster actually. And this external part here is completely separate. I think it's just loosely dovetailed together or something, so there's quite a bit of movement in that. Anyway, there's a big spring with it's like a funny little bent piece of spring wire with a little ball bearing on the end that sits on a recess in there, and that had just fallen off and wasn't reading against the glass in there, so that was an easy fix. So let's get that on. Okay, so that's bolted on, and we'll just attach the joiner block. So the carriage block is tapped. I'm only going to use 2 because 3 is just a bit ridiculous. I figured the third one would be just good if I ever wanted to put an attachment on. I don't know, maybe a taper turning attachment or some such like that. Maybe even a permanent indicator, which could be handy. Put the bolt in. Okay, so we got the X-axis all in now. So we've just got to get the dial gauge, which is stuck onto the back of the carriage there, touching on the top of the stationary scale body. We'll just do a few sweeps and see how close we are. Right, so we're about 0.05 millimeters off across the whole length. Pretty good to be honest, but let's see if we can get it a little bit better. There's also a noticeable bow to it. It's about 0.02 mils in the center, but hey, for 700 mils that's pretty damn good, I reckon. So. And also, very rarely, if ever, I'm going to work at that end, so I'm not too fussed if that one's a bit off. Oh no. Okay, so we've made a few adjustments and I think we're just about there now. So the gauge starts out at minus 0.04 mils. So in the center it comes up to about 0, and then it drops back down to 0.04 at the end. Before I crash the indicator. So I'm going to call that good. So 0.04 millimeters of bowing across 700 mils isn't too bad, I guess. So, at least not for a Chinese DRO. There's a fair bit of adjustability in that bottom runner as well, so don't expect it will affect us too badly. Okay, so the last thing we've got to do is just check the, like, what would we call it, the run out front to back, just to make sure the DRO isn't skewed this way or that way, and then we're done. Okay, so damn camera battery went flat while I was doing that, but what I found was each end is bowed inwards towards the lathe 0.1 millimeters. I think that's going to be okay. I don't think the lathe's going to be more accurate than that anyway, and whatever. I think it's just the actual bowing of the extrusion more than any inaccuracy in mounting, so I'm just going to roll with it. Becomes a problem later, I'll do some further improvements, but for now I'm going to consider this done. So let's just plug it in and see if it works. So there we go, all bolted together. Got our X-axis radio mounting plate, carriage block, Y-axis scale, X-axis scale, DRO units mounted up and all plugged in. So now, let's see if this sucker actually works. Oh, we got something. Nice. Awesome. Cool. See how much backlash we've got. Not amazing, but that's pretty good. Right. Guess you can't tell the decks, can you? So there we go, she's all done. So hopefully this will really increase productivity around here. Don't have to sit there measuring with calipers and a calculator constantly, so I'm going to go read the manual, I'm going to go try and make some parts and just see how accurate this thing is. Thanks for watching, see you later.